All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. Today, I am joined with Christine Bar Noel. Christine is a coach that helps leaders work through perfectionism, burnout, and she really helps them find balance in their life. She runs her academy called Freedom Mindset Academy, and she's the host of the Recovering Perfectionist podcast. And I've listened to it. I've been on it. Thank you,
Yes.
Christine. And now Christine gets to come on the podcast. And today we're going to be talking about burnout and perfectionism. But without further ado, Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction. And yes, you have been a guest on my podcast and it was fabulous. And I'm honored to be here doing yours.
Awesome. So burnout. This is a real issue. I wanted to share some statistics real quick to get us started, just to kind of let people know how commonplace this is. I think people have an idea of how rampant it is, but I was reading these statistics and I was like, oh my gosh. So let's read these statistics, then we can talk about what it is, then we can talk about how it shows up, and then ways that we can combat that, and then we can shift into perfectionism.
Okay.
So this is out of Indeed. 52% of all workers, more than half, are feeling burned out, and up to 9%. This was pre-COVID, right? So 52%, 75% of workers have experienced burnout, with 40% saying they've experienced burnout specifically during the pandemic. 67% of all workers believe burnout has worsened over the course of the pandemic. 36% of employees said their organization isn't doing anything to help with employee burnout. That's interesting. 37% of employed respondents say that they are currently working longer hours than usual since the pandemic started. 61% of remote workers and 53% of on-site workers now find it more difficult to unplug from the work day during off hours. Last one, burned out employees are 63% more likely to take a sick day and 2.6 times as likely to be actively seeking a different job. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think I saw something yesterday. One of my friends who's a guru of Las Vegas, Nevada, said that the state of Nevada was the second highest for resignations for people leaving their job, because they're just realizing this is just not it. And I had a lot of clients that I started working with about 4 or 5 months into the pandemic that, just like you said, they didn't know where their work hours were anymore. It was just blurry. Their home became their office. They weren't taking proper lunch breaks anymore. They weren't clocking in, clocking out. Bosses were asking their employees to work more hours because now they're from the comfort of their own home. So it just got really messy. And burnout is a diagnosable condition now. That's the thing, is like you said, it's becoming people realize how bad it's becoming, but it's like that buzzword of burnout. It's just like, oh, it's a buzzy word. It's like, no, it's not just like chronic stress. It's like a real thing. It's like if someone says, I don't want to compare it to cancer, but you know what I'm saying? We know that word holds a value of when you say someone has cancer. Burnout is a mental cancer. I mean, it's what it is. It's like it takes over your entire brain, and it causes you to act in ways that you never thought you would, and be more reactive than proactive.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was looking at the history of how this came to be, and I don't know if you've researched Dr. Christina Maslach, but she's the PhD who pioneered this research. I don't know what year. I want to say it was in early 1980s, around there, maybe even later. But the definition that she described was the erosion of engagement with your job, constant exposure to chronic stressors that have not been managed successfully, and that it comprises of 3 pillars: exhaustion, which is the emotional drain, that I can't take it anymore type feeling. Then you have the cynicism, the negative response that you have to the work. you dread going in, you're kind of just going through the motions. And
Yeah.
then the last piece is the inefficacy. So this is like your negative self-evaluation. This is like the erosion of your soul.
Yeah.
There's no future. What's the point type of attitude.
Right. You
So,
start giving up. And people
yeah,
can often you know, combine burnout with depression.
right.
Right. Or they misinterpret one for the other, or like a chronic stress. But, you know, the way we look at it, I like what you said there, the 3 pillars. In our academy, we talk about the 5 stages of burnout. Like you said, how did we get here?
Right.
And it starts with like, and I will say, disclaimer as well, a lot of it has to do, a lot of the stuff you're going to find online is going to be having to do with work. Right. We get burnt out because of the work we're doing, which is why a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. They want to work for themselves. They think that's going to be a better solution. But then they have all of these, we've talked about this a lot. They have all of these, you know, bad habits of, you know, work ethic that they come from the corporate world. They bring that into their entrepreneurial business, and they don't actually know how they have to switch it up to now be a boss and a CEO. And they end up getting burned out within their own business. So, but burnout is also very evident in your personal life. Like burnout is just an overall, like, I think that's why we work a lot with life balance, because it's not just burnout in work. You can get burnt out with toxic family members, you know, or, you know, having too much on your plate personally, that kind of stuff, or in relationships. But the burnout, the 5 stages we talk about are the honeymoon phase, right? They literally call it the honeymoon phase, which is just like everything's great and you're excited and you're going for it. And you just kind of like, you don't see the trap coming. Then the onset of stress phase, where it's like, oh, things start to just kind of be a little bit stressful, but it's manageable. Then you have the chronic stress phase, right? Which is just, you reach a point where the stress becomes so persistent and chronic. And it builds and builds and builds, and it's starting to affect your work. And then you hit the burnout phase, and that's when you reach your limit and you can no longer function as you normally would. You start to have these pillars, the exhaustion, all of that stuff. And then the 5th one, which people don't even realize, is the habitual burnout phase. Because if you're in chronic onset stress, and you don't start to make changes, you're going to hit burnout. It's inevitable. But if you then realize you're burnt out and you still don't ask for help, or don't, you know, seek out support in how to remove this, or balance your life better, then that's it. Now you're in a cycle of burnout that is much harder to remove yourself from, because it's going to affect physical, again, depression, onset, all of this stuff. And I mean, your whole life around you is going to start to crumble.
So here's an interesting question for you. Do you think, maybe this is a better way, what percentage of people do you think know that they're burnt out and would describe it as that?
That's a great question. I would say probably 30% of people that are burnt out know they're burnt out.
Yeah, I would say it's around there as well. Like, because maybe they're just so used to it.
Well, that's the thing. You become numb. And that's why that burnout to habitual burnout phase is so crucial, because it's like, you think you already lost the battle because you're already burnt out. It's like, yeah, but you don't want to become numb and start living in this. This should not become your norm.
Right.
Like, this should be the wake up call for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But when you're dealing with high achievers, most of the ones that I've worked with have really high pain tolerances.
True.
Right. And they enjoy crossing many things off that list because it makes them feel good. Right.
Yeah.
I've been victim of this so many times.
Oh, same.
And like, so it's obviously not sustainable, but the thought process can be, let me just get as much success as I can right now and then relax later. Why do you think that is good, bad, not helpful, helpful? What's your take on that?
No, that's a terrible way to think. And unfortunately, that's the narrative that my business partner, Maggie, and I are trying to rewrite in Freedom Mindset Academy is that I was the same person. I did that. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to work hard now. Right. And I'm going to hustle. I'm going to make these income goals. And then I'm going to be able to relax and I'm going to be able to enjoy my life. That time never comes. It never comes. The goal keeps moving.
Right.
And that is why that thinking is completely outdated and needs to be rewritten, because we cannot constantly be thinking that we're going to, like, basically what you're doing is you're living in the future. You can't live in the future. You have to live in the present moment. This is all we have right now. And if you keep thinking, because what happens is you keep wanting more, right? You reach an income goal and you're like, ooh, but I could have this now. And that income starts to seem small. Or you reach a certain achievement and you're like, oh, but now I'm eligible for this. And like, people are going to, the more successful you become, the more opportunities come to you. And now you have to learn how to say no. And most people, they don't want to say no. They want to say yes to everything because it's going to open up all these doors. They have all these new opportunities. And so that's why the goal keeps moving. And that time off, that enjoyable, like, I'm going to live my life and rest and play, it never comes.
It's true. It's true. So, so what do we do? Right. So let's say, oh man, I am burnt out. I'm feeling sluggish. I'm feeling tired. I'm relying on caffeine. I'm, just trying to numb with other modalities that I've figured out along the way. Like, what does someone do that's in that position? What's one simple thing that can begin unraveling that mindset and help them step into a new identity that is like, I don't have to grind my face off to get success?
Well, let's see, there's lots of simple things, but then there's so many things. I would say the first simple thing you need to do is you need to understand what your core values are. Like, that's number one. If you are working so hard, whether it be in corporate for somebody else or even working to build a business, are all of these things working towards what your core values are? For me, my core values include travel, quality relationships, deep connection, and family aspect, but that's kind of included in that. But for me, I was working so hard to be able to have time freedom and travel the world. And at the end of the day, most people, if we all look at as a human life, we are all kind of wanting the same kinds of things. We want time freedom. We want life balance. We want to be able to rest and have a good time. We want deep connections with people. Like, this is human nature, right? So core value wise, we're all going to kind of eventually go to the same thing, but all of these things that you're doing, like, literally just that's what I start with my clients on. I'm like, look at your day and look at what you do. How many of those things are actually working towards your goals? And some of them don't even know what their final goals are, right? I don't say final goals, but your big goals. Yeah. They don't actually know what they want out of life. If they didn't have to work today and all their entire goal was to just have joy, what would you do? And so many people don't know the answer to that. So that is my first thing, is like, our pillars in our academy is awareness, intention, and sustainability. And the first thing you need to do is be aware, right? It's just like anything. You have to know that there's a problem, because we talked about what we think is about 30% of the people that are burnt out know that they are. What about that other 70%? They're like living in zombie land and just walking around numbing, like you said. And I could go up to them and say, hey, listen, you're really burnt out. You need to stop. They're gonna be like, yeah, whatever, and keep working. So already admitting that you have a problem is the first step. Then you have to be intentional about what you do with that information.
Would you categorize the people that are so used to burnout that they don't even know that they're burnt out as an addiction or a lack of awareness?
That's a great question.
That
I would say first,
into my head,
that's a great question. I would say first and foremost, it's a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Now there are people like overachievers that are addicted to the feeling of constantly needing to achieve.
Busyness or just active activity.
Active activity. Yeah. If they don't have anything on their to-do list, they start to freak out. They're like, what do I do with my day? And that's rest. And they don't understand what that means.
What? You want me to sit in silence for 15
and do
minutes
nothing?
and meditate?
Right.
No.
Right. So that's the thing. When you said, like, I have my list. When you said, what is the first thing that you can do that would be easy? Meditation's on there, but that's not easy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because even for me, like, I'll go, I've talked about this with a few people where they go, why am I always late? Right? All these perfectionists and overachievers are like, that's not like me. I'm never late. And I'm like, you're not late. You're just showing up right on time, which means that if you have a little traffic, you're going to hit maybe a couple minutes late, because we don't want to show up early, because showing up early means you're going to have time where you could have been doing something else. And that's such a crazy backwards way to think. But if I'm going to a doctor's appointment, my appointment is at 2 p.m. I'm going to show up at 2 p.m. or maybe like 11:58, or I'm sorry, 1:58, because I don't want that extra time to be sitting there in the doctor's office doing what? It feels like wasted time. And that is such a terrible way to think, because that could be time where you just take it in. Like, we need to have some of this like white space in our life where nothing is happening. And a lot of us, we just grab the phone, we just scroll through Instagram, and we're not allowing our brain to not have constant consumption of something.
Yes.
And so that's why a lot of perfectionists and overachievers are usually either right on time or a little bit late. And meditation, all of those things, yes, those are the first things I would say to people who are burnt out, or even just people who are busy. Everybody should have some sort of meditation practice. But to tell people that when they don't even know that they have a problem right off the bat, they're going to look at you like you're nuts.
What have you found, like, if you really dig under the burnout, like, because burnout is not being able to say no, striving to do as many things as you can to get the things that you think you want. If you pull all of that, if you pull the thread there, what's beneath all of that that's driving the burnout?
It's self-esteem.
Self-esteem?
Yeah, it's a lack of validation within yourself, because you're seeking out, anytime you're seeking external validation, whether it be from an achievement, from a family member, from the environment around you, that you feel great when you're in a group of people and everybody's like moving and grooving and you're like the life of the party, like that is external validation of energy. And anytime that you feel you have to put out, is you're not giving yourself. It's lack of self-love, and it's lack of self-esteem.
And the 30% that know that they're burnt out, what percentage of those know that's why they're burnt out? What you just said.
Oh, they don't. Oh my God. 5%, maybe.
Right.
Like,
just keeps getting smaller and smaller.
It does. Yeah. Those people, I mean, here's the thing. My partner, Maggie, she works a lot with this like self-love and shaming and that, rewriting limiting beliefs. And so she created the 6 pillars of self-love, that include like self-knowing and self-trust and a self-worth, right? It's basically your self-worth is what we're talking about. And all of these they tie so closely they weave in with burnout perfectly, and perfectionism, because that's all we're seeking is this, like, we see the Elon Musks of the world, you know what I mean? And we're like, we want to be that. We want to achieve, we want to create a legacy, we want to do something great. And the way that we measure that is through society's kind of like programming of how, it's the way that society has created this measurable way for us to say that we've achieved. But success is relative. Right. What does success mean, right? Everybody has a different definition of success, but then we see these Instagram posts and the Kardashians and all these things, and we think, oh, well, success means a lot of money. It means that you don't have to work, you have time freedom, and it means that everybody loves you. I don't know. There's so many people see all of these ways of thinking that that's success, right? But success is how you define it. Success for someone during the day can just be that they got up in the morning and they took a walk around the block and they felt good about themselves. That can be a successful day. You don't have to have millions of dollars in the bank and a Rolls Royce outside. And, that's not, we need to redefine what success is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working towards. All this burnout is coming from trying to keep up with the Joneses, or literally keep up with the Kardashians at this point. And that's not, everyone's getting richer, younger, and we have all of these people on crypto, and we have FOMO, and we're missing out on all these things. And you cannot give your attention to everything.
Right.
Because you're just going to be
depleted.
moving you're going to be depleted, but you're going to be moving a millimeter at a time in all these different directions. Mm-hmm. You need to be focusing on one direction. And creating, I talk a lot about the concept of essentialism. There's an amazing book called Essentialism, and it is by Greg McKeown, and it is just I think I've talked to you about it in the past. People put way too much on their plate. You said people burn out because they don't know how to say no. That's exactly it. Like we don't set any boundaries with ourselves when we create a business or we do all these things. We don't want to limit the opportunities or shut any doors or burn any bridges. So we just allow ourselves to say yes. I mean, when you first started your business, how many clients did you work with that you would never take on as a client today?
Yeah, lots.
Right? I did tons, and you have to learn. And you have to realize that, like, okay, now, like, and that's only because of what we set, what our value was at the time of starting our business, right? Well, we don't have any experience. We need testimonials. We need all this stuff. So we don't have any place to say, like, I can't take you on as a client. But now we've raised our standards. We have experience. We have, client success stories. And now we feel like, okay, if you're going to work with me, here's the level. But why don't we start that way?
Because of the awareness.
Right.
Maybe we don't know how to articulate our value, or we haven't taken the time to reflect, to gain the language to describe what we want, how we feel, what we're asking for. And so because we haven't taken the time to do that, we hope that someone will either just tell us, or that in time we'll figure it out. And so large periods of time, I think, can go by without us even realizing it. And then 5 years goes by. What did I just do for the last 5 years?
Right.
And it isn't until you like go inside and start building some solid infrastructure of like how to understand who you are.
Yeah.
And what you want to be about.
Yeah.
Like those are simple questions, hard questions, but fundamental questions. And every great mentor, sage, coach, leader, if they know what they're talking about, they're going to ask you to get clear on who you are, right? Yeah. And sometimes that takes failures. Sometimes that takes asking the hard questions, but it really just takes reflection of what you're doing and making sure that, is that the direction you want to keep going in, or is it not? I don't think people ask themselves that question enough to know, to be able to grade themselves on where they're at, like compared to where they want to go.
I completely agree.
And so that's fundamental. We have to create time for that. And people are like, well, I don't have time. Okay, well then you can't complain about your situation.
Well, that's it. Exactly. My grandfather always say, you always have time for what you make time for.
Yes.
And if you don't want to make time, and also I think that the reason people say they don't have time is because that's the narrative, right? Hustle culture, survival mode, building the dream. So I'm going to spend 2 years and I'm going to hustle and grind. I'm barely going to sleep and I'm going to build this dream. And again, I told you, we keep moving the goal. So now you're, like you said, 5 years go by and it was supposed to only be 2 years of hustle grind. And now it's like 5 years. And now you're not even you don't even have an exit strategy.
These freaking thought loops.
That's it. Exactly. And so if you don't have an exit strategy, you don't set, and it's very hard to have an exit strategy when you don't know how your business is going to fare, like what's going to happen, because you're going to start committing yourself and pushing boundaries out of the way in order to keep growing. And the idea is that you have a lot of success in your business. We want that. But the more of that comes, the more you have to set stricter boundaries, and less people have to have your phone number, and less people have to have access to you. And because you now have more people that want access to you.
Right.
And yeah,
it's interesting too, because I'm just looking at my life, like starting off networking, getting to know people, wanting to be around people, sharing what I love to do. And as I get older, my family, having Aiden now, and potentially trying for more kids in the future, my family is going to become even more important.
Yep.
More time is going to be spent with them. And so I'm going to have to say no more, which means I'm going to become more exclusive, which means that the people I once said yes to that now I'm saying no to are going to feel that.
Right.
And if I'm not strong enough to weather that conflict, then I can cave and say yes to things I know I should be saying no to. Right. Which makes me feel bad that I'm doing that and judge myself for being the type of person who knows they should say no, but is saying yes.
Right.
And then bring that energy back home where it shouldn't be. And then feel that frustration, not be present, miss out on key moments of, my family's life. And if I'm not aware of that, I just keep it going and then wake up miserable. I'm getting stressed out.
I mean, right? Listen, but look how quickly you can put that entire cycle together of how quickly one thing dominoes and affects the other. That people think, oh, it's no big deal. It's just this one little thing. Yeah. And so is this. And so is this. And just like they say, every dollar adds up. It's the same thing with time. And it's the same thing with your decisions. So if you start saying yes to this, then you'll say yes to this. And then like, where does it stop? What, if you don't set a boundary and you don't say, if it's not within this scope, I don't say yes to it. Or if it doesn't work towards the core values of myself or my business, I don't say yes to it. That makes it really easy to just say no, because you're not always having this inner turmoil of like, what's the right answer? Like, I want to be a good person. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes a struggle all the time, when in reality, it's like, you're not a bad person. You're actually being able to grow a business and help more people by setting healthy boundaries for yourself and creating proper systems that allow people to still be helped through automation, delegation in your business. And it doesn't always have to go through you. You don't always have to be the end all be all.
It's true.
And
I think to that too, like saying no nowadays for me makes me feel my power.
Yes.
And I don't like, I want to say that because I don't know if people view saying no like that. I think they view it more so by the feelings they're going to hurt than the power that they're going to display.
Right.
And that is a powerful shift to say, no. What about this amount of money? No. What about this opportunity? No. What about this date? No. Like, there's power in no.
That is the truest wealthy CEO vibes that you could ever have. I work with this girl. Her name is Meg. She is the definition of wealthy CEO, and that's her whole brand. And it's amazing because she goes, wealthy CEO. Yes, it is wealth, income, wealth. But she goes, it's not even about the money. It's about the mindset. Being wealthy means that you have given yourself permission to say no. And that makes you feel like a wealthy CEO, because you are actually delegating, or you're saying, no, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to send so-and-so. Or like you said, no, I can't do it on that date. Versus how many times have we moved around our schedule and shifted personal things to be able to accommodate something that's doesn't even have a good ROI. Right. You need to have a good return on investment in order to, and that doesn't need to be, because then people get into this whole conversation, which I think this conversation is shifting, which I'm very happy about, is this whole concept of being selfish. And it's like, if it doesn't work with my core values, and if I don't have a good ROI, and if it doesn't work with me growing my business and still having a good personal life, then I don't want to do it. And everyone goes, well, that's just selfish. Don't you care about humanitarian work and helping other people? And you don't always need to get something in return. And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. And I do those things as well. But if I don't create boundaries within my space, the more that I grow, then it's the concept of pouring from an empty glass. I will be completely empty and not be able to give any more to anyone else, because I'm the one steering this ship.
Yeah. That's good. You know what I just thought of? You know how like some people, instead of saying shit, will say ish?
Oh, yes.
Like, I'm on that self-ish.
Selfish?
I just thought of that. I don't know why. I thought that was like super cool.
Cute.
I'm gonna keep that in my mind from now on.
That's it. I have a whole episode that actually was one of my highest rated episodes on Recovering Perfectionist podcast called Self-Care is Not Selfish. And that's just about self-care.
Right.
But when you think about as a CEO running your business and delegating and automating your business and trying to create systems that allow you to be less involved and really just do what I call the talent activities, which is just the ones where you physically have to be there in your face and your voice. Like that is the ultimate flex. And it allows you to feel like you can actually breathe and you can help more people that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know? So yeah, that's not selfish.
And when you slow things down because you are being selfish, saying no to more things, and you create that white space that you were talking about, that's where the miracles come from.
Oh,
right. And I was just
that's
listening
where all the yummy stuff of life is.
I was just listening to a podcast with Aubrey Marcus and Alex Benane, and halfway through the podcast, they were talking about the Sabbath, right? Like the religious Sunday, the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And many different religions. And this is not a religious kind of point that I'm making, but the Sabbath, the day itself, is a day where no work is done.
Right.
Like no thoughts about
Saturday.
it, no books
Saturday,
about
right?
it. Or Saturday or Sunday. I think it depends on the religion.
On the religion. Okay. Yeah.
But the Sabbath is a day of rest.
Right.
And by rest, it means family. It means fun. It means no work. And like when you say that in America, they're like, what? Wait, no.
Yeah, that's not.
I gotta get ahead. People are gonna beat me if I don't
work every day. If everyone's breaking, we can get ahead. That's that mindset. Absolutely. Right. My husband has a business partner from Israel, and they do it on Saturday, right?
Okay. Yep.
In the Jewish religion, and so they don't do anything. Like literally they have businesses that they're open and all these things, and they delegate. They have people that run them.
No phones, just family.
They are not available on Saturday. And we know that. And everybody works around that. And we're like, oh, it's Saturday. It's fine. We'll talk to him tomorrow. And it's not a big deal. Now, it takes some transition and getting used to for a little bit. And then after a while, you're like, it's fine. So that transition period is what makes people uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want to tell people I'm not available. They can't reach me. What if there's an emergency? Oh,
that's the one right there. What if there's emergency? What if like the business suddenly takes a turn and I got to be there? What if the mind is like the what if machine?
That's it. If you just create a boundary and you optimize and adjust accordingly, but you really like become like present in what it is that you need, like they have no issue with taking off Saturdays. And that's one of the busiest days of the week for US businesses, honestly. And they're like, this is what our religion does. And I love that. I'm like, good, do you? Like, you're good.
There was a quote by, what is his name? James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And he was, in his blog, he had a quote that said, the moment I thought about it in this way, my life changed. That thoughts are not commands, they're suggestions.
Oh.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is so good. Because like there's so many thoughts that come into our head. You're gonna fall behind if you don't work today. If you don't work, all those emails are gonna pile up. You don't want to come back to 1,000 emails in your database. Well, what if if you're not there, then your reps aren't gonna sell. And then if you're not there, then you can't duplicate yourself. It's like literally.
Do you know how many thoughts we have every day? I don't actually know.
60,000.
60,000. Okay.
On average.
So if we took action on 60,000, like you can't physically, you can't.
No.
So even 1,000 thoughts, you know what I'm saying? Think about that. And so when, I know when people are like meditation professionals that talk to you about like how to properly meditate, they're like, you're going to have thoughts, because trying to shut down my brain is just not happening. So you have thoughts that come through and they're like, you just need to let them pass by, just like a ship, like just let them pass by and it's fine. And don't react to them, or don't take action on anything, or don't like think of another thought. Right. Surrender to the thought and let it move by, and it will go away. Now, the thing is that when you think about that, right, those are again, I love that you said that, it's suggestions. That's why he's the king of habits, because that's exactly what they are. you're going to have those things based on a preconceived notion of something that happened in your life that allows you to think that way. I have so many people that they think about taking a day off and they're like, oh, I don't think about my emails at all. You think about your emails? Right? And I'm like, how do you not think about your emails? Right? But that's because their life, there was something in their life that did not allow that thought to even be a problem, right? You have people who are scared to get on an airplane, and you have other people that are like, oh my God, I love flying. Something in their life has made them scared, right? So those thoughts, they're just there because of something that has popped into your brain because of something else. And it is your choice to accept that that is a valid thought that your ego is trying to protect you or whatever it is. And you can react on it, or you can just let it pass by and decide that, you know what, that thought is not serving me and I need to focus on what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes. The visual I have is when you're like on an app in your phone and a text message comes through on the top and you just flick it up.
That's it. Absolutely.
Flick up those thoughts, man.
That's
just
it. Or like an ad, you're on Google and an ad pops up and you're like, click X out.
Yeah.
Right?
Stay focused on relaxation. Stay focused on whatever it is that's important in the moment, you know?
That's so true. I have a couple other things if you want, just burnout recovery. We were talking about burnout, avoiding burnout. Obviously the big thing is, as we saw in the stages of burnout, is early detection, right? The earlier you can catch it, the easier it's going to be to recover from it, or avoid it altogether if you're just in that like honeymoon phase, onset stress phase. But having a good morning routine, right, is always good. But also a lot of people don't talk about having a good evening routine, right? Because you need to come down from your day. A lot of people say, well, I can't sleep. I'm like, yeah, because you're still in that work zone. How many people have insomnia and can't get to sleep? Right? So having a good calm down, which brings me to phone limits, creating really good phone limits and set specific office hours and stick to them. So that helps you to wind down. Obviously creating systems in your business, automating, delegating to, you know, hiring out a team when you're growing, and taking a day off when you can, but also like scheduling it in. If you don't schedule it in, it'll never happen. Right? Meditation.
What scheduling software do you use?
I use Acuity.
Okay.
A lot of people use Calendly, but then you have like project dashboards. I used to use Trello, which I love.
Okay.
But yeah, that's been a new adjustment for me because I was archaic, and I would say 3 years ago is when I stopped using it. But I would go every year to Office Max and I would buy a desk calendar. And I would write everything on my calendar because I needed to see it. I'm a visual person, and it was hanging on my wall, and anything that I had on there, that's where it would go. And everyone's like, oh, you should really use a phone calendar. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't like it because then it's got all these other things that Google gives me and it's just complicated. So I ended up finding a really good calendar app that now everything goes through there. But I had to start realizing that all of my personal stuff has to go through there too, because otherwise I can get double booked. So anything that happens, I go through Acuity, and all of my emails and everything gets grabbed by my calendar app, and everything gets put in there and it's color coded. So I can see if there's anything, and nothing can get scheduled if I block out the time.
Yeah.
But everything that happens, if I'm going to go to Disneyland for a day, if I'm going to go have lunch with a friend, something that's not even work related, I put it into my app because it has to block out the time.
Right.
And that has been, I mean, a lot of people, I'm like way behind in that mindset, but it's the concept of being able to blend your work-life balance together, your personal and your professional, because a lot of people, they don't know how to blend it. So they just say, forget it. I'm not going to have a personal life. That's their way out. And it's like, well, no, it's not that hard. Just let me explain. There is a way to do it properly. But everyone goes, well, no, I can't schedule anything. Like friends want to have lunch. They're like, I'm just too busy. And they don't schedule it. It's like, no, someone says that to me. Let's put it in the calendar right now.
Right.
My schedule's right in front of me.
The coloring thing, I think was a big one for me to see visually in color where my time is going. You know, and specific colors, meaning like recovery activities, family activities, work activities, content creation activities. And then, you know, on a weekly basis, I can be like, all right, this is going to be a heavy creation week, or this is going to be a heavy family week, you know, and like just to see that prepares me mentally without even having to read what I have to do.
Right. And if you have a heavy work week or a content creation week, then how can I be intentional? Because again, all this information that you're talking about awareness there, you're like, wow, everything that's color coded, that made me aware of what my week is going to look like. But how do you use that information to be intentional about how they can help work for you instead of against you? Meaning that the following week maybe should be a little bit heavier on the family. Right. So let's be intentional. Babe, let's schedule something in with the kids and blah, 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 like be intentional about that. And that is what I think so many people is like, oh, well, I already know what my schedule looks like. And I'm like, great. Well, how are you using that information to help you not burn out? You're not balancing it with the proper personal, activities.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are hard seasons. So we're not talking that like you're getting rid of hard work, right? There's going to be moments in your business, just as there's seasons of everything where you're going to have to like work your face off, but the key there is to know what modalities you can partake in that offset that heavy stress or workload. What have been like a few of your favorites when you notice you're like, oh my gosh, today was just a really stressful day. I need to either de-stress or I need to get back to my center, or it's been a crazy month. I need to just, what do I got to do? What's on your list for things to do there?
Well, for me, it's dancing. Because I grew up dancing. That's what I did for a profession for a while. I competed, at competitions. So when I go social dancing, like I say on my list of burnout recovery is literally figure out things to do that trick your brain into having fun. Because overachievers, perfectionists, like we can't be off, right? And so when I'm dancing, my phone is in the car. And I am literally like, I have no choice but to just be present in that moment, listening to music, reacting to what my partner is making me do. Some people, they like to go golfing. They like to go swimming. They go watch a movie because the phone has to be off during a movie. Lots of different things. My husband and I, we love to go on bike rides because if I'm on a bike, I've got to be reactive. I got to know if there's a car coming. I got to go I'm basically using these activities to trick my brain into being as present as possible. And that helps me a lot. I will say also what helps not just after a long month or a long week of work is have you ever heard of the Pomodoro method?
Yeah. 80-20.
Yeah. Well, so that's the concept is that like basically you work in sprints, and this helps you to not get to that point of burnout because as the way we can just go. We push through. Like you said, a lot of your friends and workers, coworkers, they have a lot of high tolerance for whether it be pain or stress or time used. They can last a lot longer until they start to get that brain fog and they're like, I can't focus on anything anymore. I got to shut the computer. But if you do it this way, it's kind of like knowing when to leave the party, right? Before you get like too drunk or knowing when to stop eating before you overeat. It's the same concept with time. It's knowing when to stop and leave yourself wanting a little bit more, because then you're going to take a break and then you come back, you feel much more refreshed and inspired and motivated to do what you need to do instead of trying to push through a 6-hour work slot. So the idea is to do like an hour and a half. They say 90 minutes. I like to do 2 hours. It's a nice round bookend for me. And then I do 30 minutes off. And so then I try to get how many sprints in a day can I do? How many 2-hour slots can I do where I still have, and 30 minutes off means I'm going outside, I'm getting fresh air, I'm going on a bike ride, I'm maybe meditating, maybe taking, having some food, but I'm not checking emails. I'm not scrolling on Instagram. I'm not doing any of those types of things that is not allowing me to shut my brain off.
Yeah.
You're either fully on or fully off.
So when you said that, I was thinking of the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20, but
okay.
you're talking about the Pomodoro, which is
the Pomodoro. Yeah. So it's a concept of work, a work method that allows you to feel like you can sprint. When you said 80-20, I thought, well, yeah, you work 80%, you're 20 off. I don't know. That's what I thought you meant. So, but it is the concept of being fully on and fully off. And so many people are never that. They're like that marathon runner. They're just always kind of jogging. So they're never in recovery mode and they're never fully performing, right? Versus you want to be a sprinter. You want to be someone who performs at the highest level that they possibly can and give the best podcast, the best content, whatever it is, be the best, most present person in your meetings. And then when you're off, you are fully off and you are mentally recovering so that when you're back on, you're giving 110% of yourself.
Boom.
Yeah, but you can't do that if you're just always kind of at 80%, right? Like that's not gonna happen.
You gotta rest. Oh yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not that
You said
tired.
that yesterday.
Right?
I know, I just got one more thing I gotta do.
That's
okay.
All right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So as we wind down here, any last, well, we got a few minutes here. Talk to us a little bit about perfectionism and how you recognize it and then how you combat it so that you can develop greater levels of acceptance and really live life in integrity with who you truly want to be, regardless of what other people think.
Mm-hmm. So perfectionism is the concept of, kids who grew up getting straight A's in school or just doing really well and realizing that they were able to achieve more than the average person. And you start to see that, oh my gosh, when I do this, I get this result and this is so cool and this is different and I can like bust out of society's norms and I can do different things. And then you get addicted to that feeling. That's where the addiction comes in. You said, is this an addiction or whatever? And perfectionism is an addiction. You want that dopamine hit of like achievement and checking things off a list and, putting out fires, right? Whenever you're the person that people call. And that is a very hard thing to overcome and realize, like, I can't be that person anymore. Big thing, obviously, saying no, setting boundaries. This goes back in with burnout. And the biggest thing for perfectionists is realizing that everything's not an emergency. So I started giving myself like 24 hours of like, if a client calls me or emails me, oh, I need this logo, I would like find a way to get them that logo in the next 10 minutes. That was ridiculous. It was completely not sustainable and unrealistic of running a business. Basically, I see the email go through. I write myself a note. If I'm out and about doing my things, I finish what I'm doing. I be present, and and they know, every client knows that they will have a 24-hour turnaround on anything that they need, unless it's like a giant project, right? Mm-hmm. But any last minute thing that they need. Also, productivity is how most perfectionists measure themselves. And it's usually based on work related. But when I say to perfectionists, okay, well, rest and play is part of success, right? You cannot be successful if you don't actively rest and play and rejuvenate. And we talked about that fully off concept. Productivity, I think, applies to rest and play as well. That word needs to, again, be redefined as, am I being as productive in my work? Am I being as productive in my personal life? Right? So sometimes you can have half a day where you're like, oh my gosh, I was so productive today in my mental health. I meditated, I journaled, I went on a bike ride, I did all these things. And people don't use the word productivity in that. They think, oh, I was so productive in work, and then I took some time off. It's like, oh, well, that's great. But like, it sounds like you had a really productive mental health day. That's how we need to start defining things. So it's all about how we say things, right? And how we allow ourselves to think about it, because as perfectionists, we define what certain words mean. And it's like, no, we're not productive enough, which means we don't value ourselves. Again, it's a self-worth issue.
Right. So where's the line with that when, because you talk about productive in work, and I think it's easy to kind of measure your productivity because you have metrics and money and sales and people who you're talking to and all that. But personal life, if you take that same like obsessiveness that can come with productivity and convert it to being productive in personal life, do you have the carryover of the obsessiveness into the personal life that almost makes it feel like work?
So you don't, the way that we measure it is by feeling. And that is so much harder because there's not a measurable number. So, but come on, we all know how we feel. Like I had a wealthy CEO moment the other night where I met with a client and I was like, I came home, I was like, babe, like you need to tell people, like it needs to be a verbal thing. A lot of people like to journal. I just come and like spill it all to my husband. I'm like, babe, I felt like the wealthiest CEO tonight. And you just have to like live in that moment. What does that feel like? That's such a great moment. Or maybe you just feel so relaxed, right? You just like, oh my gosh, today I just feel so calm. I don't feel like there's emergencies. I feel so easygoing and calm. And I feel like I have all the time in the world. Why do you feel that way? Like when you have those moments, reflect on that. How can you intentionally make yourself feel that way when you are not?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? How can we be intentional about that feeling? It's like you want to capture that feeling, put it in a bottle, and you want to just like open it up whenever you're feeling stressed, right? How can we intentionally do that? There are ways to do that. There's tons of strategies and ways but a lot of it is journaling, is remembering that moment, but also coming back to yourself, meditation, being present, right? And then figuring out that life is not an emergency, that the world's not going to be on fire if you don't do this one thing, right? Another big one is like celebrating your small wins. Is perfectionists, a lot of time we measure big things. It's like, oh, look at the month, I did this major thing. And it's like, you did a lot of things in that month, right? So my husband and I have what's called life points, and we give each other life points whenever, or we give ourselves life points whenever we feel like something was just really great. And it can be something as simple as, I mean, it could be a big thing, like you won an award, or we moved into a new house, or we got married, big things. But it can also be something small, like, we finally finished that project that we were working on, or we went out and had a date night and it was one of the best date nights ever, and we hadn't had a date night in a while. Sometimes you give yourself a life point for that. Like it's however you feel. And those small wins add up. It's like Velcro, right? Gets stronger and stronger the more you have, and they become big wins, and it becomes your life. And that is what is so important, is that concept that we talked about, moving the goal all the time, and just, I'll enjoy my life when I reach that goal. You're just like that. The destination is the grave. We're not all trying to get there faster. So you have to enjoy the present moment that you're in right now, because this is the journey. And you're always going to be kind of doing this. Even if you reach that goal, there will be more goals. But if you take time in between those goal settings to enjoy the life that you're building, right? In our academy, we call it live in the house you're building. So you're going to constantly be renovating and building and building and building, but don't be living in a hotel or an Airbnb down the street while you watch your house being built. Live in the house while you renovate and enjoy it.
I like that. I like, what if I'm like, well, I don't enjoy dust in my house when I'm when I'm doing my cabinets.
Well, maybe don't renovate so much. Maybe like
smaller projects at a time.
Take a moment. Yeah. Smaller projects at a time, but that's so metaphorical to life, isn't it?
Right.
It's like, yeah, we always feel like it's not ready to live in. But like, why are you constantly feeling you need to renovate? Why are you not happy with what you have right now? Look around. Gratitude practice. Like that's number one for burnout and perfectionists. Gratitude practice. Look at what you have compared to what people in, Ukraine have right now. Yeah. A whole lot more. You know what I mean? And you're living in a wonderful world, and maybe it's not exactly what you want, but like your life is probably what you wanted 2 or 3 years ago, or it's a life that somebody would kill for, in a third world country. So like that gratitude can bring on more of like, oh my gosh, like what if you didn't have a car tomorrow that didn't start? What if you woke up and you felt really sick? What, like we take our health for granted, like we could just walk around. What if you woke up and you couldn't move your arm? Like these are things we don't think about because we take it for granted. And when you start to realize that those things, how grateful you are in life to be living the life that you are living, a lot of those other things, like you realize you don't want to renovate your house as much anymore. You just want to actually enjoy and savor every moment that you can of this beautiful life that you're building, but have also built.
Right. I love that. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Christine, for your wisdom, your knowledge, and for sharing with us on these powerful concepts that I think can help shift a lot of our stuckness, and get us to think different ways. So where can everyone find you? What's the best place, and how can they support you if they feel called and aligned?
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm big on Instagram. So Christine Bar Noël on Instagram. And yeah, if you guys are interested in something deeper, like my academy is really what I'm putting my sole focus on right now. We just finished round 1, and it's been incredible. Our students are just like having transformations left and right. We're about to start round 2. So freedommindsetacademy.com. And yeah, it's just next level. It's a 4-month container, and live coaching, community support, online curriculum. It's if you're even struggling a little bit with work-life balance, burnout, a lot of entrepreneurs building sustainably, right? They want to scale their business, but they're scared if they put more on their plate, they won't be able to handle it. So they almost like they're right trying to avoid burnout, but it's like that stumps their growth. And it's like, no, you can grow and blossom like the flower that you're supposed to be, but let's put systems in place and let's create good habits and let's rewrite those belief systems that are holding you back. Like it's a process. It's not an overnight success situation.
Right.
So
amazing. Well, thank you. Continue to be you and serve the world. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.